All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Gay Men Going Deeper, a podcast by the Gay Men's Brotherhood, where we talk about all things, personal development, mental health, and sexuality. Today, I am your host, Calan Breckon, and we have two very special guests with us today. We have David Oliver Wudel, and we also have Ryan Michael Williams, who some of you guys know as one of our moderators in the Gay Men's Brotherhood. And today we are going to be talking about disability visibility because we've been wanting to do this podcast episode for quite a while now. And now we can finally bring it all to you guys. So I'm not going to lead off with too much, and I'm going to let David introduce himself. And then we'll move into Ryan introducing himself, and then we'll jump into the conversation. So David, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. Well, hi, everybody. My name is David Oliver Wudel, and I'm a queer artist based in Calgary, Alberta. And I live with a disability called cerebral palsy.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us, David. I'm super excited to dive into today's episode. And Ryan, how about you go ahead and introduce yourself there?
Alrighty. Hey everybody, my name is Ryan. Like Calan said, I'm one of the moderators in the Gay Men's Brotherhood, and I am oh God, do I have to say it? Almost 40-year-old man, gay man living with cerebral palsy, and I have been my whole life, so I'm happy to be here.
Nice. I'm so excited to dive in with both of you guys on today's episode. So let's start off with the basics, because I know that there's going to be a lot of gay men out there listening to this who are very ignorant like myself, just because I simply haven't had a lot of people in my life who have had any types of disabilities. So let's jump into the easy stuff and start off with just kind of like what's some acceptable vocabularies and what's unacceptable vocabularies nowadays when discussing disabilities. Because I know that for myself, when I was bringing this topic up, when Ryan and I were talking about it, I was very nervous and very scared to like say something wrong. I was like, oh man, I don't want to get anything wrong. I don't want to like say anything bad or make anybody feel bad. And that's kind of why I want to do this episode, because I want to open that door so that, it opens the door for learning and education. And yes, you might get it wrong once in a while, but as long as you're doing it in the right way and you're opening those doors and you're trying your best, that I think is the most important thing. So David, we'll take it over to you. What are some, what's the kind of vocabulary that you prefer when somebody's talking about it and bringing up disabilities?
Well, I use a wheelchair full time. So when someone's referring to me, I like to be referred as a wheelchair user, not someone that is defined, confined to a wheelchair, because I just think that sort of language is very dismissive. So yes, I have CP, but it doesn't define who I am.
Gotcha. So it's you use a wheelchair, you're not defined by the wheelchair, because that's kind of like more open, inclusive language.
That's right.
Gotcha. And is there any other terms that like people are not supposed to be using these days? Things that like people might think, oh, this is okay, but it's just you don't talk like that anymore.
Well, I've never liked the term handicapped. I think that term is now so archaic. Sure, it might have been acceptable, 30, 40 years ago, but not so much now.
Gotcha. So ixnay on the handicap language, because it's not. And then also, even when I was bringing this up, I was just like, do I say disability or do I say like differently abled person? Because I know that there's people in the world who also prefer that language. So I know when I was talking to you guys, I was asking like, what's your preferred language? Is it kind of like what's your preferred pronouns? It could be equated to that, where it's just like different people like to be used different terms.
Totally. Like I don't mind the term disabled, because I am, but again, it doesn't define who I am as a proud gay man.
Right, exactly. Well,
Yeah.
Ryan, I'm curious to see what you have to say about this.
I'm very much on the same page as David. I think any, as far as what is acceptable, I try to be a little bit lenient because I understand people are learning, right? Like you said, it's like kind of like pronouns, and as that changes, people are gonna slip. They're gonna make mistakes, and it's okay. Um, I very much prefer the term disabled to handicap. Handicap was what we used when I was growing up, so I'm very used to it.
Right.
But as we're progressing, it's like disabled is it's more respectful, right? It's
Yes.
just there's so much negativity connected with handicap that it's just better to let it go. And it's hard because sometimes you'll get people who you're fine joking around with, people in your circle and stuff like that, and then there's people that you just no don't talk to me like that, like don't call me.
Mhm.
I've been called things like a gimp, things like that.
Yep.
Those are so derogatory, right?
Mhm.
And people think it's funny, but it's really not, right? Like it it kind of makes you think, well, how do you see me then? Right. And it goes
Right.
to what David said. I feel like names even define me by my disability. So that's why the importance of kind of paying attention to how we say things makes a difference, because I don't want to be defined by my disability. Right.
Mhm.
Um, basically anything that we used in the 90s is pretty much no longer acceptable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
Looking at the
know,
90s, I was like, oh, that was just, not that long ago. But now I'm like, oh no, that was actually much longer ago than I thought.
yeah, that was, yeah, I know, right? I know, I did that
Yeah.
the other day. Somebody said 1995, and I was like, I was not even 20 then, like, holy crap. Like,
Yeah, right.
you know,
We're a lot older than we care to admit, I think.
yeah, I think so. But yeah, I mean, that's basically the way I look at it, is anything we used in the 90s, that was okay then, it's pretty
Yeah.
much not okay now.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, well, this kind of pairs into the next question. So, like, what's been the biggest struggle about being a gay man living with a disability in the gay community? Who wants to jump in on this one? Because I'm sure both of you do. But let's go to David first.
Okay. Well, my story is somewhat of a unique one. I think I came out at the tender age of 31. So I'm 34 now. So I'm just kind of coming to grips with embracing my queerness and kind of trying to immerse myself in in the community and be a positive role model for people out there.
Yeah, so you're like a
Um,
fresh little baby gay.
I'm a baby gay, yeah, and honestly, um, it like I knew from a very young age that I was gay, but growing up, I already faced the label of having a disability, so I fought really hard to suppress um, my queerness growing up because I just didn't want to have two labels attached to me. So that was my big thing.
Gotcha. So you're like, well, I already have this. I don't want to have to deal with this big crap over here as well, because
Right.
we all know the gays don't exactly not deal with crap.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
So you waited a little while until you came out. You're like, okay, cool. I've, the disabled thing, all of that going on. I'm gonna embrace this queer side of me now. So let's just like
Right.
go over here and focus on that.
Right, and for me, it came to the point where it's like, you either have to come out or, um, quite honestly, come out or check out of here, because there's no point in living a facade and not living as authentically as you can.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
I'm obviously so happy that I'm sitting here talking to both of you today, because that just proves that I made the right decision.
Oh, fully. So I'm curious, what's the biggest struggle been around being gay and, living with cerebral palsy and being part of the gay community?
I think the most obvious one would have to come down to dating. Just because, again, there's already so much that you need to worry about being disabled, but then when you add the queerness factor on top of that, that's a whole nother layer.
Definitely. For everybody,
So,
dating is
yeah,
always just
yeah, and then the number one question that I get that I can't stand is because they look at me first and they ask me, does it work? And like that's emasculating in itself. Like it's it's hard enough to date, and then if that's the first impression that people see from you, it's very hard.
Yeah.
To overcome that.
Definitely. But that also speaks to like the whole gay community as a whole. You go on Grindr or something like an app equivalent to, and sometimes the first thing people send you is like a dick pic and a hole pic and this and that. And it's just like, if that's the only language we as gay men are learning how to speak, we're teaching the younger generations that like, this is your only value. This is where your value, and that's not true. That's not your only value. That is not even, I don't even say that that's a value. I want to know the person. I want to know the mind. I want to know what's going on there. A relationship for me is, a long-term, like forever thing. And it's like your body will change. Things will change. Accidents can happen. You never know what's going to happen in the long term of your life. And I look at my grandparents who were together for like 60, 65 years before my grandpa passed away. And it was like they made a commitment to like be together every day, but it was the mind that kept going. It was the mind that was the amazing part.
Right. And the thing I always remind people when I'm faced with those superficial moments is, whether we want to believe it or not, no, all of us are going to face the prospect of being disabled in some way. It might not be obviously right away, but it's very much a reality for everybody.
Mm-hmm. Oh, definitely. Because the older you get, our bodies aren't meant to just stay young, 20 fresh twinks forever. You're eventually going to get older and like things start changing. My knees, I'm a very tall man. My knees, my back, like,
yeah.
So I am curious, Ryan, what about you? What would you say is probably one of the biggest struggles or the biggest issues you've had in regards to the gay community?
Honestly, one of the biggest struggles I've had is the superficiality. So, like you said, Kellen, when you go on the dating apps and you see these pictures, there's all these built men with the muscles and and they're skinny and I will never look like that. I can't look like that. I can't lift weights. There are things that prevent me from looking like that. And it is very intimidating. When you look at these people on the apps, you honestly look at yourself and go, why would somebody want somebody like me when they can have that? Right. And I know you're not supposed to compare yourself to other people, but it's so hard when it's staring you in the face. It's so hard. And so for me, that then turned into getting into my own head, right? Because
Mhm.
that turns into I will never be good enough. I will never have what these people have. Nobody will want me. It sounds very grim, but I mean, these are the thoughts that we deal with, right? Because, like I said, you're looking at it right in front of you and you're like, how am I going to find somebody when there's all of this other stuff out there? So I think for me, that was the biggest struggle is how do you get somebody to see you like you were talking about, to see you for the person you are instead of the superficial stuff they see in front of them. And I don't know, it just feels so much bigger. Like the job
Mhm.
feels so much bigger because I have to convince somebody that I am the person that I am, not based on these superficial, pictures.
Mhm.
I guess in one way, we actually have it better because in the end, like when we find a relationship, it's probably going to last because we did the work, because we had to. We had no choice. We had to do the work, but it's difficult.
Mhm.
Mhm. That compare and despair game. Oh,
Yeah.
everybody does the compare and despair game. But I
Mhm.
always remind myself if and when I use those apps and you're looking at somebody, a picture can only tell you so much. All it says is the aesthetic. You have no
Yeah.
idea. Maybe that person, maybe she crazy. Maybe she a
Mhm.
crazy girl and you meet in real life and you're like, oh, this is why you're single. Okay, I see you.
Yeah.
And it's like you said, Ryan, like you kind of predeterminedly had to do the work, and
Mhm.
anybody who
Mhm.
wants to date you would have had to probably do the work as well to get to the place where you are, and that's like a filter that other people don't really necessarily have to go through. And I think about people who get into relationships with other people simply because of their aesthetic, and I'm just like, do you only want to be with them because of the way they look? Because that's going to change. That's going to, like, people get old. Like
Yeah.
it's
Mhm.
Fade.
like it happens. And I'm just looking at people. I'm like, okay, I hope that everything else is deeper. I hope that you're still developing minds and you challenge each other to grow and all of that kind of stuff. But yeah, I definitely hear you on the dating app front. So would you say that you get discounted a lot more often when you're in the dating apps simply because?
Yes. From my experience, it is, I mean, again, some people are based on that superficiality, right? And because there's something wrong with us, they discount us, or they look at us. David, you probably have a little bit more experience with this particular thing than I do, but they can look at you and go, that's too much work, right? There's to them, there's extra work that comes with being
Mhm.
in a relationship with somebody with a disability, and they just look at it and go, that's too much work.
Yep.
And they discount us right out right away.
Yeah. And I think for me, the what I tend to run into a lot is um I can kind of flirt my way past the first couple superficial questions, but when it comes to talking about anything with my disability, then it's like you're almost having to over oversell yourself and kind of reassure people right away that you know you know what you're doing and you've been through this before, and like you know you're kind of trying to take that onus on yourself when it's not entirely fair, because when you're in a relationship there's two people for a reason,
Oh yeah, it takes two to tango.
Yes.
right?
100%. So if you're on the dating apps and people want to talk to you and have questions, how can somebody go about doing that without coming across as like a giant douchebag or an ignorant asshole? Because I mean, I'm sure there's millions of people all around the world, and I'm sure there's not everybody who's just looking at that aesthetic. So when it does come to people and they're like, Huh, okay, I want to ask them questions, but how do they do that without sounding like a dick or an ignorant ass?
Well, I always try to kind of beat people to that question. Like I always try and say, like, if there's anything you want to know, just ask me. Like I'm an open book, so I kind of cut them off at the pass before they have a chance to broach the questions themselves.
Gotcha.
And then it kind of evolves into hopefully a respectful conversation.
Yeah. Do you ever use like comedy and joking? Because like most people do that when they feel uncomfortable. It's like your Tinder profile and you have yourself, and then you're like, yes, just in case you're wondering, you know, I do use a wheelchair full time in case that's a shocker to you.
Yeah. I mean, I think for me when I first came out, like that first year, like I'll be honest, like I came out and then I was on Tinder right away because I was like, oh, okay, here we go. Like you gotta.
She was swiping right on every. You're like, all the gays.
Yeah. So I mean, I was obviously eager, but I just feel it's to joke about it now is kind of doing me a disservice.
Okay, so there's no joking that goes on.
No.
All right.
No.
See, I'm learning stuff now.
I mean, some people are comfortable with those jokes, but the older I get, the less funny they are.
Yeah, because it's always the same jokes, probably over and over and
Right.
over again.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, I heard that one,
Right.
a million times.
And what about you, Ryan? What about, pardon me, somebody's asking questions. How do they do that without coming across as like an ignorant ass?
One of the best ways to do that is say, I have a question. I don't know how to word it, and I don't want to come across like an asshole. Say it straight out, because then I know that you have a question and you're struggling with how to word it, right? At least then I know that you're aware that it might come across weird, and then I can answer it for you, because from my perspective, I want to give you the answers you're looking for, right? I want to make you feel just as confident in me as I do. And so if you just say, I have a question, don't know how to ask it, and I might sound ignorant. Okay. And I do. It was very neat for me to hear David's perspective on the jokes, because I've always considered myself lucky when it comes to CP, because I am not in a wheelchair. I can walk, I can, function, all of that stuff. And I acknowledge that I could have had it way differently. And I do joke about it, like I always tell people that the Hunchback of Notre Dame is my life story. that's me, like, but for me, it works, right? If I laugh about it, if I joke about it, then other people can see that it's okay too. And it's okay to make mistakes. We all make mistakes. Like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Even when talking to other disabled people, my boyfriend is trans. I've made countless mistakes, trust me. So, even though I have that disability, doesn't mean I'm immune from making mistakes as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's best just to ask it straight out and say, I might sound like a bitch, but at least I know you tried.
Right. You kind of preface it with just like, hey, this is not meant to sound as a douchey thing. This is like a genuine, honest, curious question.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. And David, and it's interesting to see that, like, David, you were like, not so much on the jokes. And Ryan, you were like, hey, I like the jokes because I make the jokes, because we're all different people. We all have different preferences. We all live life differently. So David, coming back to you with that, how do you, how could somebody ask questions without coming across as like a douche?
Honestly, I try and I try and not. I try really hard not to bring up the fact that I have a disability right away, because the fact that if we connect on an emotional level and we have the same interests, and they're truly, interested in me, at the end of the day, I don't think a disability should matter.
Yeah, totally. 100%.
Yeah.
It's like when people say they have preferences and this, that, and the other, it's like, oh, I like people who are tall, but then somebody who's, very short comes along. It's just like, are you going to discount them simply because they're not like the required height that you thought you liked? It's like personality is so much more. Personality and like, I'm a very mental person. I like to say I'm sapiosexual because I'm like, you have to like tickle me up here in my brain before you can tickle me anywhere else. And like that could come in so many different packages and sizes and all of that. So it's just like, that is my number one go-to. And that's just the way it is for me. So so we've been talking a lot about like kind of like maybe some negative things and that kind of stuff. What are like the positive things? What are the positive sides of living with a disability?
Ryan, do you want to go ahead or?
Sure. Honestly, one of the biggest positive things for me is it gives us something to talk about. Quite often that will, if somebody comes along and they ask questions, it opens the door to have conversation. So, it's a very good icebreaker, I guess is the best way to put it, right? It makes flowing into conversation really easy. You're like, oh, look, there's that hot guy over there. I'm gonna go talk to him about my disability because it's there, So for me, that has been one of the good things. And the other very good thing, like you said, Calan, people are forced to look past and see my mind, see the person that I am. And that for me is a good thing because it is forcing the gay society out of the superficial box that they live in, and they have to see the whole package. And so I like to feel that I'm doing the gay community a service by making people look at my mind.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You know what I mean, though? Like it's right.
Yeah.
We force people to look other places. You have to. And
absolutely.
I like it. I like it a lot. Yeah, so those are the two biggest ones for me that make it really good. And then when people do start looking outside that box, the friendships that you make, the relationships that you have, they're incredible because these people took the time to understand, right? So on the other side, it's incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, as, a gay man with disability, we essentially have all the power where we want the conversation to go and how we want to lead off, because I think it's our job to kind of reassure those fine fellas out there that we got this, like we know what we're doing. So in a lot of ways we have the power.
Yeah. So what has living with a disability taught you about yourself in life? Because I know that you're a fresh baby gay, so I'm sure you've learned a lot of new things recently about this, David.
Yeah, I have. Well, number one, it's taught me to not be so superficial. And it goes back to what Ryan was saying earlier about not comparing yourself to others and wishing you were, wishing you were in a different place than you are, because honestly, where you are is a pretty good place. So, and I think the number one thing my disability has taught me is just patience. And that goes for across the board, like patience in all aspects of life.
Yeah, I can only imagine you'd need to have a lot of patience and to develop patience because you're like, I want to do something quickly, and then it's not going to happen so quickly sometimes.
Yeah, my quickly is like, give me half an hour to 45 minutes. That's my, like, I'll get something done really quick for you. But
Yeah.
I don't ever set time limits for anything, because I don't want to I don't want my disability to win.
Mhm.
And something just popped into my head and I wanted to say it straight out because we've talked a lot about superficiality. And I just wanted to say that, we go through it too. We look at these
Yeah.
hot guys and we go, oh, they're not going to talk to me. They're so hot. We go through that superficial thing too, where we look at people and think that they won't talk to us because they're so hot. And I mean, the partner that I ended up with, I never dreamed in a million years that a guy like that would end up with me. We go through it too. So I just wanted to make that clear so that, anybody watching this, or even you, Calan, don't feel like you're the only one that, you guys aren't the only ones that place superficiality. We do it too. And we get proved wrong all the time.
Mhm, mhm.
Yes. Yes.
And even everybody goes through superficiality. I have those moments where I'm just like, why would a guy like that date me? All the time.
Yeah.
All the time. I'm like, no, he's never going to look at me. He's never going to talk to me. And that's my own stuff in my own head. And we all have that.
Yeah, and it goes to what you said, Colin. It's like I think that boils down to human nature, because we all we all deal with that, and some of us are better at disguising our superficialities better than most.
Mhm.
But we, at the end of the day, we all struggle with that.
Yeah, exactly. I'm curious, Ryan, because you brought up a relationship. So you're in a relationship. So
Yes,
obviously
sir.
you've gone through a lot of these, struggles online and all this kind of
A
stuff.
lot.
What kind of adventure was that in going through the dating world and finding a partner and actually like having because like I'm still single. I'm like, okay.
Dude,
Any
it was a
tips?
mess. It was a mess, man. Um, I had gone through a couple people that I kind of adopted this mentality of this is the best I can do, and dated a couple people that perhaps I ought not have, and gotten myself into situations that I'm like, whoa, this is way more drama than I bargained for.
Mhm.
And what I realized, like I stopped dating, I would say a year and a half ago, and started doing work on myself and just focused on that. And on the other side of that, when I adopted this mentality of this is what I want, this is what I don't want, it felt, for lack of better terms, normal. I was able to go through the profiles and go, nope, this person just wants sex, or that person, and find what I wanted. But before I got there, it was a mess. Honey, it was like, it was, I can't even like, you know, um, and it really proved that you attract what you put out. It
Yeah.
really proved that. And like David said, we have to be patient. And that is so hard. You know, I'm damn near 40. I didn't want to die alone. I I honestly had this fear that I was gonna just die alone, you know.
Mhm.
And when I met my partner, I was not looking. I was not, I was on the apps, but we all have the apps on our phone, they're just there. I wasn't actively looking, and then it just happened. And honestly, there's something to that,
Mhm.
stop looking, stop trying to make it happen.
Mhm.
as soon as you do that, things just start to fall into place.
Yeah. So is it
Yeah.
so am I correct in saying that like beforehand, before you started doing the personal work, it was like, I'll take what I can get. And then once you stop doing that and you're like, you know what, screw that. I'm just going to do me. I'm going to focus on me, get
Yeah.
my head, on straight. And then
Yeah.
everything just kind of started following suit.
Yeah.
Interesting how that
and
happens. Hey.
it was take what you can get because it's the best you can do, right? Because you have this mentality of, I can only do so good because I'm disabled. I'm never going to end up with a hot guy because I'm disabled. You have all these barriers. The second I did that work though, man, I tell you, it made a shit ton of difference.
Mhm.
It really did.
Even I used to like think like that before I did my work, where it was just like, oh, this is the best I'm gonna get. If like even like a slightly attractive guy liked me, I was just like, well, this is the best I'm gonna get. So I'm just gonna go for it. Whether she's crazy or not, it's fine. I'll deal with it.
See, my thing was if a very attractive man liked me, I was like, what is wrong with you? Where is your flaw? What is
Oh
wrong
my
with
God, I
you?
still think that sometimes.
Right?
For me, I'm just like, why do you like me? What's wrong with you?
Exactly. Exactly.
Oh my goodness. What about you, David? Have you, now that you're here and queer and everybody's getting used to it, have you been on the dating scene?
Well, yeah, I would say probably less now because of just because of the world and the way it is right now. But um, like you said in the beginning, it was like, yeah, here we go. We're gonna go, balls first, and charge right at it. So like I was not shy about getting on every app I possibly could because I had a lot of I had a lot of time to make up for, I thought. And then when I kind of stopped trying to play the player game, I realized I kind of asked myself why did I come out, and the answer is like bottom line is I want to be happy and I want to find love.
Yeah.
And to me, those are like the only thing that matter to me.
Gotcha. So you had to stop playing the player game.
Yes. Yeah.
You were out there collecting you were collecting matches like Pokemon cards, right?
Absolutely.
You're just
But
like, yep. Gotta catch them all.
That was definitely not a good thing.
So you kind of focus. So I guess like, I mean, COVID, the world, it shut down everybody's life. At least if you were a good person, it shut down your life. Because I definitely know there were people who were not following rules. But if you're like myself, it was like things basically shut down. I think in Toronto now, things are just starting to opening up. Just this past weekend, actually, this is it's coming out later, but like recently I had gone out and it was like the first time, and like there wasn't plexiglasses, everybody could like get up and walk around, and I was like, this is so weird. And I almost didn't know how to function.
Yeah, I know, and I worry like for where I am, we're still, I mean, we're not in a lockdown or anything, but it's still pretty bad here in Alberta. But I often wonder, like, when we do go back to normal, like, am I gonna know how to be normal? Because you kind of need to practice like seeing people again because you're so used to just doing the same thing every day, and you get into this very unhealthy cycle.
Yeah, in order to date it again and to be a normal human being, like it's so weird to just be like, so how do we do this? Am I allowed to like hug you? Am I allowed to touch you? Like, do we need to sit 6 feet apart on our date? Like, I don't know. Everybody has different comfort levels. It's a whole wild
Right.
adventure out there in the dating world.
It totally is, yeah.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so if after today's episode, what do you guys want people to have walked away from learning in today's episode?
I would say for me is like, yes, we have disabilities, and yes, we're a little bit different than the average gay man, perhaps, but aren't we all different? And don't we all just want the same things? Just because it looks a bit different doesn't mean it's wrong.
Yeah. And yes, we all do want the exact same thing at the end. I mean, unless you're some weird sociopath, I think most people just want, like, they want love and they want to be loved and they want to give love. But so many people have up all these walls of like this fear. And it goes back to kind of what you were talking about earlier, I think, Ryan, about how like you have a filter. So people have to have done that work. Whereas somebody maybe not living with a disability, they aren't forced to do that work. So they're out there just, throwing whatever they want all around and portraying whatever they want without actually having done the work. So you're getting the veneer of people. Whereas with you, what your explanation was, it was just like, no veneer. This is, this is it. This is what you get. I'm fucking amazing. You're you're welcome.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. We can't hide it. Right? We can't, it's not something that I can warm you up to the idea and bring it out later. It's there. So you either accept it or you don't.
Yeah.
Right. And I guess, I mean, that goes back to my answer about your question, Calan. What do I want people to get out of it? Don't make assumptions. Ask questions. Go ahead. You aren't going to offend me if you do it the right way or say, explain yourself. You're not going to offend me. Ask questions. I'd rather you that than make assumptions. Because you might be putting an assumption on me that isn't there for me, right? Like, just because we are differently able does not mean we are completely incapacitated. Does not mean we can't function. Does not mean we don't know how to, live life and do things normally.
Right.
We do. If we have limitations, we will tell you what those limitations are. Those are ours, not yours. Right. So yeah, honestly, that is the biggest thing. Don't make assumptions and just ask. Don't be afraid to ask.
Nice. Today's been a very eye-opening and educating episode for me, which I'm glad. I needed to do it. I wanted to do it. And I hope a lot of people out there are listening and getting a lot of, good little tidbits as well about dating. And, hopefully they're going to think twice about making those assumptions next time they're on them dating apps.
Yeah.
All right. Well, today has been magical. I am so grateful to have had this conversation with you guys. David, thank you so much for joining us. Ryan, thank you so much for joining on today's episode. Is there any last little bits or anything else you want to throw out there before we leave for today?
Yeah. Go ahead, Ryan.
I just want to, for anybody who is disabled watching this, find your confidence. Because as soon as you find that confidence, people are drawn right to you. So do the work you got to do, find your confidence. And once you do, it will work out so much better.
Yeah. And that's just it. Just kind of embrace who you are and know that who you are is enough.
Nice. Love it. All right. So let's do a little bit of promo. David, if people are interested, because you're an artiste, which you do great work. So where can people find you if they want to search you out?
Thank you very much. I'm on Instagram, the number 6 wheel co, and then my website is 6wheelco.com.
Awesome. So I'll make sure to put that kind of those links into the show notes if anybody's curious. And Ryan, if anybody wants to connect with you, is there somewhere you prefer them to connect with?
I am everywhere. I am I am inside the Gay Men's Brotherhood. You can find me there. I'm on Facebook, Ryan Michael Williams. You can find me there. Um, yeah, and I'm pretty easy to find actually.
Awesome. Cool. All right. Well, this has been another fantastic episode of Gay Men Going Deeper. If you liked what you heard today and you love what we're throwing out there, please hit that subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube and click that little bell so it notifies you every time we do new episodes on Thursdays. If you're listening to us on a podcasting platform, give us a rating there. If you're listening on Apple, give us a 5-star, leave a review. We love getting reviews. We love reading reviews. And if you're not part of the Gay Men's Brotherhood, which is our free peer-to-peer support group, you can join us in Facebook at Gay Men's Brotherhood. And I think that is it. So thank you again, both of you, so much for joining and educating everybody in today's episode. Peace, love, rainbows. Have the best day ever, everybody. Bye.